Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today in our War Thunder Talk series, it's time to once again talk to Jengar. Now, if you don't know who Jengar is, he is a YouTuber who focuses primarily on AirRB and is easily for me one of the best pilots out there and one of the people who really, at least when talking about the game, really understands how everything works in it and basically where it should be improved. How are you doing, bud?
Yeah, I'm doing fine, man. Thanks. We'll go.
Basically, to go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Brain fart.
Okay. But today we're going to be going through some questions, which, to be honest, I think will create a lot of discussion. We have overall a few times, had a chat about what should be improved with RRB, what should be looked at, and today we're going to be going over those certain things. So let's start off with kind of a refresher course. 7 months ago, we had a chat about RRB and what we believed should be improved about it. Do you personally think that there has been improvements, or do you think what we talked about has been implemented, or is there anything which you see as an improvement to RRB since then?
Well, that's the ham question, isn't it? I mean, we talked about it. We were very passionate about it, and we're 7 months later, and we have tier 6, but it is not a real improvement to the general game queue for RRB. I mean, we still have the same maps. We still have the same mechanics. We still have the same win conditions. Nothing we talked about has changed. They haven't added extra little events to the maps. They did have a few new maps with some extra little things on there, but only the addition of those new maps is the only thing they changed. And in desperation, I had a little bit of a rant video 6 days before the last patch came out, with a message like, "Come on, guys, and start changing things because RRB really needs it." And well, then they brought out Supersonic, but still, I've been playing this for a little bit now, and although the rank 6 planes are quite enjoyable, it still doesn't change anything to the rest of RRB and the other battle ratings. So precious little has changed, unfortunately.
Yeah, for me, when I look at it, the only real thing that has had even a significant change is the map types. Like I look at they added in France 1944, Lake Ladoga, maps like this, basically maps over the last few patches. And what we see is at least some innovation when it comes to the amount of bases, the amount of airfields. Air spawns is something. They've re-added bridges to a lot of these maps, which is nice. But overall, we're seeing the same mechanics used in a different way. And so there's a little bit of change when I compare them to the worst maps, I would say, when they were released, which were the basically the ground maps that they converted to air, like Normandy, the Mozdok map, the El Alamein map. I thought
Hmm.
they were some of the worst maps that they'd ever created. So at least there's some improvement from them, but there's no innovation. Like there's no new mechanics, as you said. So you were saying about supersonic jets. So let's get into that. I personally am not a jet fan, never will be, because I find that a stock vehicle in jets is too far from a fully upgraded vehicle. And now with supersonic jets, it gets even worse because of the addition of air-to-air missiles. But for you, how have your experiences been with supersonics? Have you had fun? What do you think about like thoughts going forward? Because I see it as much more of a beta test right now, since we only have technically two supersonics in game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very limited, of course, and you can also discuss about whether the countries that have them right now are going to be, played a lot. People who hadn't gone through tier 5 yet or rank 5 are going to really push that, and how much incentive for them is there to then do that for countries who get these planes added later? Maybe they should have waited until they had a supersonic jet ready for all the nations, and then bring it out all at once so that everybody could play a supersonic jet in their favorite nation. But of course, I mean, Britain also has one, and it's not supersonic. So they were kind of shafted from the start. Although the Javelin, I mean, as a flight model, is also seems rushed because there's a lot wrong with that plane. It snaps all over the place, and it doesn't do what a normal delta wing should be doing. But that's basically on the planes themselves. I what you said about the maps is good, but a lot of the maps are not adjusted for supersonic speeds either. I mean, you have a lot of small maps where you try to build up some speed and you almost never get to the supersonic speeds. Well, sometimes you do, of course, but in a general sense, most of the fight takes place outside of the supersonic speeds. And then there's little things as well while playing, like this sonic boom cloud. A major irritation for me, because when you come from a dive and you're behind an enemy pilot and you're on the edge of supersonic, this cloud appears and you can't see your enemy anymore to aim at him. So there's a lot of things that can still be improved upon while for the gameplay. But I found it fun. It's a novelty, and I mean what you said about not being a jet pilot. My main love is with props as well, but I do fly jets regularly still, and yeah, they're a fun novelty. But like you said, it's a limited change. The missiles are nice, although they are sometimes no more than making the plane move, because you just have to make a slight turn to avoid these missiles, which is good. Of course, the airline missiles were not that accurate, but yeah, I mean it's not that much new stuff there. And if you look at the maps, the new maps they added, like you said, have a little bit more juice to them. But the victory conditions are still generally the same. Although I noticed on one of those maps that if both of your airfields are destroyed, that you can still fight the enemy team, but you can't land anymore. At least that's what I noticed on one of those matches. But for the rest, it's I mean it's just a distraction. I feel they really need to a complete overhaul of the RB setting. Maybe have maps have different scenarios and stuff like that. But yeah, I like it, tier 6, but in a general sense, they need to still do a lot of work on the game mode itself.
So you talked there about, new mechanics such as air-to-air missiles, also maybe adapting maps to certain kind of events. I mean, one of the best things for me would be if we put them into an actual historical setting and moved it from there. But then the issue is obviously balance and stuff like that. But going down the mechanics route, so recently, well, over the last year or so, in Enduring Confrontation, we've seen a lot of mechanics added to it, such as the most recent one, modular airfields, where it splits the airfield into different parts, and each part has an effect on the other parts of the airfield. So you actually, you have to decide what you want to destroy, and you also have to bomb more precisely. Then you've got stuff like battle lines, where basically it tells you the rough estimate of where the offensive line is of the battle. And then you've got random events, which is something that was added very early on in Enduring Confrontation. For me, I've always seen Enduring Confrontation as this kind of testing ground to see what works, and then if it works, maybe we try and implement it in the more popular game mode, which is Air RB or Air AB. But for now, there doesn't seem to have been many ideas which have made the jump. But let's have a look at these ideas. And for you, what would you like to see from these added into Air RB?
Well, the obvious one is those airfields. I think that's very interesting, and it gives more of a challenge to bomber pilots. I mean, just flying to the bases and then to the airfield, and that's it. This is a little bit of a nice tweak, but it's not very dynamic. It's still I still see it as a very simple change. You still have the airfield. Okay, it now has 4 parts, and that's great. And they should continue on this idea also with the bases, I feel. But for real dynamics in a game, that would involve much more things. Like they haven't. I don't know if they tested this in EC yet, but I don't think they have. Where you can actually revive a base, for example. Have the moment the base is destroyed, a column appears somewhere on the map, and if this column reaches the airfield is revived, and you can land again. These kind of things are much more dynamic, and that's what I'm missing with the ideas that that Gaijin is pushing through. Of course, this battle line is also a thing that they implemented, and that's a good thing. And you can do a lot of stuff with dynamics in that as well. But like you said, it hasn't made the jump yet. And Precious Little has in the past as well from EC, and I wonder when they're gonna start doing that, because this is really the crux, the thing that they haven't done, and the thing that they get a lot of critique for, and they have been getting this for a while already from a lot of people, and a lot of these people are not in the game anymore, and I hope they will listen before this new generation of content creators it will also leave maybe in the future if they don't develop this part, what is so much asked for. So yeah, we'll have to see. But definitely the modular airfields and a battle line or a scenario setting, what you said on maps, you can have different wind conditions on different maps, and that should not be too difficult to implement. And what we talked about last time, the whole thing about driving trains and columns and all kinds of stuff, factories. You can think of a lot of things they could implement very easily without this dynamic stuff. But I think the dynamic stuff for the future is the most important to make it more interesting.
For me, when we just look at the modular airfield idea, I think it would be a great one which could be implemented in AirRB. But you could also take the same idea and put it on bases, or you could take the same idea or put it onto just general areas where if you bomb a general area, or let's say of a base, maybe you can either destroy the factory or the transport area or something which is just slightly different than just a health bar. Because obviously it's kind of boring as a bomber pilot just bombing a base to kill a health bar. Like it doesn't feel very realistic. It doesn't feel very historical. It doesn't really feel like anything. I've always liked the what's that game called? The Stalingrad game, IL-2 Battle Stalingrad. Yeah. I've always liked the realistic way that they've done attackers, that they've done bombers. But I understand from a War Thunder point of view, we're never going to get that much detail because it would just be pointless. It would be a lot of work for very little gain. But I still think that there should be improvements in that way. For me, when we look at other stuff that could be added to AirRB, random events is something that we didn't really used to get, but we used to get events which made each map different. So if you remember on Norway, there used to be a squad. Was it a squadron of bombers which would hang around the center of the map? Do you remember that? And then also spotter planes, which on maps like Sicily. Now, why do you think they got rid of these? Why has there been this taking away of AI in general instead of adding it? I know that they've said in the new year that they're going to be working on AI, so maybe we see them in the future again. But it seems odd to me that they've got rid of this element of the game, or at least tried to in RRB.
Yeah, do you want to hear my skeptical approach to this? I mean, I think they do that to shorten the matches and to give less rewards for us in the game. It seems to be that way. If I put on my dark hat and my anti-Gaijin hat, I mean, I'm not anti-Gaijin, I love their game, but sometimes you get frustrated with the decisions they make. It's often one step forward and then 2 steps back. And the taking away of these vehicles, we've seen it from 5-6 years ago, where you had many more ground vehicles that counted for the tickets, you know, and they reduced that until matches took much less time because there are much less vehicles on the map. It's much easier to finish the match. And to take away these spotter planes, less RP, less SL. It's then it takes more time to progress, and it gives more incentive to people to play premium, to buy premium time, or a premium plane to increase the progress. And what they did in the latest patch with the assists and the crits, and that is a terrible mess as well for the rewards and the the rewards that people get from a match, where you if you get a hit, you don't get an assist anymore, and very often if you get a crit, you don't get an assist, and sometimes you don't even get your kill from a crit. So the detection system and the reward system is a mess right now, and I feel that taking away all those vehicles is part of it. It has to do something with their business model and the way they look at their queue times and what they want to achieve there, but what they're not thinking about the customer and binding the customer over long term to the game. And instead, it seems to me that their business model is short term, where they want to make as much money from a person that comes new into the game as quickly as possible, instead of trying to bind this person to the game long term and then hoping to make a lot of money from this person over a extended amount of time, instead of wringing him out in a short term. So that's my skeptical view on this, my dark head gaijin view, and maybe they have a different reason. I also wish they would explain more about this, why they do these things. I mean, somebody had to point it out. I didn't even notice in the beginning. Like, did you notice that the spotter planes are gone? You what? And then you start to pay attention. They're actually gone. Okay, was it ever mentioned? I don't know. I didn't see it. So the communication is also abysmal, and they could do that much better.
Yeah, for me, when I look at it, because there's still some AI on some maps, like Spain. Spain still has bombs on it, at least since the last time I played it, which was maybe at least a few months now, since I don't really get it a lot. But the other thing, when it comes to the assists and the hits and everything, it has been confirmed a few times that it's a bug. And since this period of time, basically around, I believe the way it was explained to me is that the 4th of January is the like Christmas period for Russia, so therefore they're gonna have a few days off. But for me, that would have been priority number one. Let's fix this, before we go on holiday. It's kind of interesting as well because they actually made assists in ground easier. They made the crit idea easier, so it's actually easier to get assists in ground and now harder to get them in aircraft. And for me, that just seems very odd. I don't take as skeptical of a view, but I do agree with one aspect that you said, with the fact that they are trying to get money out of players from day one, which is going to affect the long-term issues. And this is basically because of the rank 5 premiums. Whether we talk about ground, whether we talk about air, whether even if we talk about naval, with the destroyers that are rank 3. What we are seeing is high cost premiums, which are designed for people to grind to the higher echelons of the game very quickly. And what they're doing is they're throwing people who may be new to the game, maybe old to the game, into scenarios that they're not used to. And they're going to get pummeled by more experienced players. As you go up in the ranks, you get more and more competitive, or at least that's the idea of the game. And if you throw a bunch of people who are new to the game into that environment, they're just going to get annihilated. And it's going to screw with statistics, it's going to screw with everything, as we've already seen with stuff like the XM1 from ground forces. And now we're seeing a scenario where because there are certain vehicles, such as, once again, in ground forces, the Leopard A1A1, L44, which is an insane vehicle. It's having to be downed because of the fact that these these ideas are being given to these vehicles are given to newer players and they don't know how to play them. So we technically now have what should be a 9.3 vehicle at 8.7. because of people getting pummeled in it because they don't know how to use it. Now, this has happened in there as well with the 9.0 jets, which I'm unhappy with. But going back to the AI thing, the I when it comes to AI, I don't take a skeptical view. I just think that they are bad at AI. I mean, when I look at like all of the AI in War Thunder, even going back to like the early days with the biplanes, where they would fly around the map chasing jets down. Uh, I I don't think they've ever got AI right. And I think their idea is to take it all out of the game. And then once they get it right, which is one of their goals this year, to re add it. Now, we'll see over the coming year if that's the case or not, with the spotted planes or with generic AI going around the place. But what they are very good at is setting AI to go in a straight line, and that's really about it, or follow a straight path. When it comes to trying to adapt to the game scenario, maybe it's not as good. So yeah, I would take that view on it. But going from enduring confrontation, I think we both agree that enduring confrontation is fun, but it definitely has its downsides. Now, for me, I would personally like it to become the main game mode instead of the generic RRB, just for a little bit of spice, just for a little bit of difference, because it has so many different mechanics in it now, because it actually feels like a war or a battle scenario. Whereas RRB, for me, just seems like a bit of a PvP, dogfight, and that's it. I much prefer RBEC because of its feel. Now, do you have any objections of it becoming the main game mode, or what do you see as the future for RBEC compared to RRB?
Yeah, we do have a different view on that. Let me first say that I'm also that skeptical view on Gaijin on the AI is, and maybe you're right, and they can't do that right. But just taking vehicles away that were, for example, 15 vehicles in a column first, and now it's 10. That doesn't have to do anything with working of the AI vehicles. That has something to do with the rewards and how long they want to make that queue time. And because of that, because of the fact they never explain that stuff, you leave the doors wide open to people to become skeptical. And like I said, I love this game, and I think they made a fantastic game with huge potential. But that lack of communication sometimes makes my skeptical side come forward, and then that is what I think. But let's hope that's not really why they are doing it. As to EC becoming the main thing for RRB, I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's two separate game modes, and although I do play Enduring Confrontation when I have time and when I feel like it, the game mode is much more expensive. It takes a much longer time, and for people like me who have kids and work and all that, to combine that, sometimes I have an hour to play, sometimes half an hour, sometimes more. When I have more and I feel like it, I play AC. But in a general sense, I like shorter matches. And aside from that, I also feel that the regular tree creates a situation where you can have epic experiences, where you have matches where you get 5 kills, and you dogfight the last 2 people, you win the match, and you are the reason why there is a victory. And those are actually the moments that keep me coming back for more in War Thunder. And if EC would become the main thing for realistic battle, and the general queue as we have it now would disappear, I would lose those moments, and I think that would be detrimental to the game experience, to be honest, because although you can have a lot of influence in an enduring confrontation match, it will never be as epic and as monumental as you can have it in a shorter match where you have immediate results. And I think for the younger audience as well, maybe with the attention spans, the general queue is more addictive. It's more addictive in a sense, I think. Although if you like the longer matches, enduring confrontation is fantastic, and I like it for what it is. But I think it's two separate things. I think they should have it as a regular thing in the weekends. Enduring confrontation should always be up on different maps with different settings, and should be fantastic fun in that way. But the general queue should always be there for people who like shorter matches, and the development that enduring confrontation has made in the game mechanics should spill over to these normal maps to make them more dynamic. But that's how it should be in my idea.
Yeah, for me, even though I would love RBEC to become the main game mode, there are two big factors which are sat in its way: patience and the fact that the whenever you have an event for RBEC, it seems like people talk a lot about wanting to play it, and then nobody ever plays it. So it's just it's one of those weird things. It's like when people say, "Oh, we really like playing light cruisers," and then you sat there in a queue for 20 minutes, and you're like, "Okay, well, where you at?" So for me,
Yeah.
for me, when it comes to RBEC, that's the biggest issue. And yes, I do agree that it does take away those individual experiences. But for me, I've always valued having kind of a massive war going on or a massive battle going on instead of my personal individual experience. I've talked about a lot the idea that they're realistic and not as much ground realistic, but definitely air realistic promotes the idea of like the hero of the battlefield. Like if you get 4 or 5 kills, you're going to carry the match. It's going to feel really good.
Mm-hmm.
But every other game mode, it isn't really like that, and it much more promotes team play. It much more promotes the ideas of winning as a team, and so therefore, I think it would be a good trade in order to get all of these other mechanics. Now, if they decide to add all these mechanics into RB, the ones that we've talked about and others such as random events or, random AI popping up, then fair enough. Let's play RB all day. But with the amount of progress that has been made over the last year in RB, I am becoming very skeptical whether it's ever going to come at all. But instead of focusing, on the doldrums of RB, why not have a look at some of the stuff which was added? So the main one which was added to aircraft and helicopters is air-to-air missiles in the form of very early, let's call them lock-on missiles, because that's basically how they work in the game. And so what are your experiences with air-to-air missiles, and do you think that there are any other mechanics which are similar when it comes to actually, dogfighting that could be added to the game, which could enhance the experience?
Well, as to the missiles, this was a funny thing, and the only missile kill that I've had was an ally. And for the rest, I could not play the first few days of the patch because I had work. And then when I came in, every time I fired a missile, and I mean you get better at it. In the beginning, I shot from a too long a distance, but and the missile actually doesn't reach the target because it reaches its maximum limit before it actually reaches the target. So. But when you get a little bit further in the play, people just you get a big red warning on the screen that you are being targeted by a missile, and even if you miss that, if you make a slight turn because you're following somebody, the missile will actually miss. So for me, it's actually like a thing to make somebody turn with. Right now, it seems that most people, or maybe I've just been unlucky and only met good pilots, but the people who are aware and they just avoid these missiles. And thus these missiles become more of a tool to make somebody turn so that you can get a shot with your guns, basically. And for the future of this, when you get more interesting missiles that actually home in on a target and are, stay there, actually destroy the target, I don't know if that will become interesting gameplay. As not only would you need much bigger maps because some of these missiles have huge ranges. Um, it would be more of using the terrain and radar, and who sees somebody first most often wins. I don't know if that's viable uh, for interesting gameplay. And when it comes to dogfighting, the only thing for me that, like I said before, what these current missiles add is that it is a way to make somebody turn, to force somebody to turn and lose speed so that you can actually catch up and start a dogfight with the guns. But that's what I feel at the moment about the current missiles.
Yeah, that's basically my feelings as well. The air-to-air missiles are not a killing thing. They are much more of a let's bleed their energy and then get an energy advantage over the enemy, and
Yeah.
then from there use the primary guns to take them out like that. And this is slightly different for helicopters in the form of the H1Z and the Mi-24P because they can actually hit a few more Gs while they actually turn. So they can't turn on a dime, the missiles, but they're a lot more flexible than the jet ones.
Yeah.
But from the jet point of view, I think the way that they've implemented them is actually really good, and it's
I
a
agree.
good first step. I would be really worried if they just decided to throw in just killing machines, which just
Hmm.
annihilated anything in the air. So I'm happy with that. So moving on to the next part of the question. So, what other mechanics like this do you think we could see in the game? I personally think some kind of radar mechanic where. Something like a P61 or a Doe 217, which had radar in real life, maybe they could get an extended view range, but at the same time, they would be able to be seen, easier if you click on your radar. I think that could be something added to the game which would enhance the experience. What do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that idea. I've talked about this a few times as well, where I feel that they could make this much more interesting, where night fighters with radar could actually see normally in a night match, or could see normally when they're in clouds and stuff like that. Would make the radar carrying planes much more interesting because you almost, well, you see some of them, but you see a lot of those radar carrying planes are too big, too heavy, and they're not played. And if you give them an advantage in certain maps, that would definitely encourage people to play them. And for the rest, I don't know how many mechanics would actually be possible. Maybe ground radar next to airfields could then also play a part with making things more visible around airfields. But and you could get SAMs in a certain points, of course. Ground to air missiles, which would be interesting in the Vietnam era. But for that, they would first have to flesh out the amount of planes there, of course, and the amount and the maps. I mean, Saigon maps and stuff like that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a mechanic that we have in ground RB, where if a person gets too close to the spawn, they are highlighted on the map. So is that basically what you were talking about with the idea of like airfield radar? Is that how it would work?
Yeah, maybe there would be several ways you could do this, but that could be an idea. Yeah, I didn't know
I
that was in
think
there. Yeah.
yeah. Basically, if it's a tool to prevent spawn camping. It doesn't, but
Uh huh.
it just means that when you spawn, sometimes you can see enemies that are very close, and therefore it can give you a slight advantage over them.
Right.
So we've talked about AirRB in general. I think we're both a little bit. I think we're optimistic for the future, but after having a look at the last 7 months, we can see that the progress is at least very slow. Like, would you agree with that?
Absolutely, snail pace,
Yeah.
gadget pace. I mean, sometimes I wish that they would listen to some people of the community who have extensive thoughts about this because it could be so much better, so quickly with just simple things added. It could be much more interesting, and they wouldn't have to make this step back all the time and lose players, because with every few steps back you lose players, and I think it's unfortunate. I really think it is, and I wish they would look at their business model and their way they communicate with people. I have mentioned several times that they are improving on this the last year and a half, slowly but surely. But I still think it's not where it should be. I mean, how difficult is it to mention that you're removing these spotter planes? How difficult is it to give a little bit more feedback what you're working on? Hey guys, we're working on World War mode. We had this idea, we discarded it because it's not fun enough. So we now have these and these ideas. What are your ideas? Give us your input. That kind of stuff would help enormously to make this game much, much better, I think.
I think 2018, when I've actually been doing some tallies about, how many Q&As have we had, what different things have they done, and 2018, when it comes from a community cooperation point of view or community communication point of view, it has been the best from Gaijin. They've done the most Q&As this year. They've done videos addressing specific issues, mainly due to the ground stuff and obviously the parts and FPE stuff. But there have been several videos over the year just looking at, what they want to do, going forward. Now, obviously, these are full of weasel words, which obviously destroy pretty much everything they're talking about. But
Yeah.
at least, at least it's an improvement over the years before.
Absolutely.
Now, I would definitely want some additional, like, kind of just, hey, this is our plans for the year. I understand that they've created that infographic, but that is, to me, a waste of time. It doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't tell me the general direction they're going in. Like, from a planning point of view, I would love to see if they're going to go whole hog more into this rank 6 stuff, which I'm pretty sure they're going to.
Yeah.
But if they do, then I know I can just move on and I can go play some other stuff, because I'm just not interested in that part of warfare and never will be. But I will never know that until it's actually out. It would be nice to know some general themes of what's going on. Obviously, not individual vehicles and maps, but general themes that they're looking at. And talking about a general theme, the one thing that has been brought up time and time again, especially now that we're going more modern, is actually going backwards. Now, for me, I don't think this would work for ground vehicles necessarily, because they are incredibly slow and arduous, and the guns aren't very good in the 1920s and the early 30s. But when we look at aircraft, it's a slightly different story. The aircraft, at least, are much more entertaining, and we've seen some games in the past which have taken either a World War One model or something very similar to it and actually done pretty well. So for you, what do you think about if they decided to go back in time, more to the interwar period or the World War One period? Would you enjoy this in RRB, or would you much more prefer them, to push forward with the supersonic stuff and try and get that all nailed down right now?
I would love it. I would love it if they start adding these older planes. Absolutely. I mean, Manfred von Richthofen was one of my idols as a young child, and absolutely fascinating character. And all these guys in the second or in the First World War were very flair characters with scarves that flew out of their planes, and it's just fucking amazing. I love these movies, and I would really like it. Whether it would be fun. I mean, I have fun in biplanes when I fly them, so I think it could be fun. Absolutely, and they could make gorgeous artwork on these triple deckers and stuff like that. It should be very interesting, I believe, and I think they should do it sideways with the rank 6. I think they shouldn't focus mainly on only rank 6. Of course, every nation should have their rank 6 now, their supersonic planes, and they could add one or two and get a bomber in or something. But I hope they still keep diversifying and also just keep adding props and a World War One rank, maybe a rank 0, would be. I wouldn't be against it. I would have fun with it. I'm sure. Yeah, let's go. Tomorrow would be better than the day after tomorrow.
For for me, I love the idea of the interwar period, just because you have so many weird and wonderful designs that they could chuck in. But the main issue, obviously, that we do have to think about is the monetization angle, because they've shown over the last year it is quite a large part of at least what they're thinking about. So therefore, how do we monetize it? And I think you just do it the same way as you do every other thing that they've done. You create a CBT, you offer premiums for that CBT, and if you want to do it per nation, you could do it per nation. You offer some kind of historical skinned biplane or monoplane around that time, which people would get really excited about, kind of very similar to the F-86, F-35 that we've seen. So I think it's possible. I don't agree with the people who say that people grind through it all, within a day. There are ways of screwing with the RP to make it take a lot more time, make it its own separate part of the game instead of having to be connected to everything else. And then once it is, or at least people have generally ground through it, then you could introduce it and create it, make it a part of the game. So it's easier for the new players to grind through it. I think it's from my point of view, there are a ton of World War II vehicles which have not been added to the game.
Hmm.
Same with interwar period, same with slightly post World War II, and I would much more prefer them focusing on that. But well, if the last year is any example of what we're going to see moving forward, then that will not be the case. Since last year was basically an explosion of the top ranks of War Thunder.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people are interested in these time frames. About monetization, I think I've never understood why they have not done more with the skins and selling skins for reasonable prices. I I mean the premium planes are one thing. I love that as well. I have nothing against premium planes. I think it's fun for collectors. I'm a collector myself. Even before I got into the partnership program, I bought a lot. I spent a lot of money on this game, and I think that's great for the people who want that. That's good, and premium time and stuff like that. It's all logical stuff, but they should take away these boxes and stuff like that. I don't feel that's a good, like a random thing, like a gambling thing in game. They should just uh, work much more with creators on live for skins and give them 25-30% and just sell these skins for golden eagles. I think a lot of people would be interested in that. There's a lot of games with young people where having the latest skin is the thing to have, and people are willing to spend money for that. Many games only make their money on cosmetics, and for Gaijin leaves this in the corner for the guy with the loser hat. I don't know why they do that. I really don't understand why they don't put more effort into making skins and creating fantastic skins for planes on a regular basis. Just have a skin creation team, or leave it to the creators entirely and just all the good skins put them up for a price here, so that creators can actually make some money on that. Um, I think that would be a good idea to make more money in the game as well for Gaijin, so that they can make the progression easier. It would be a trade-off in that sense. Like I mean, I know the skins are you can put them in for free now, but if you have people pay money for that and you make the progression through the trees easier, so that people have to spend less money on that, I think that could be a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, I personally like the marketplace because it's player driven. players make the prices, and it means that I can get a ton of really nice skins for 10 cents, basically. Whereas before, that isn't the case. But I do think there is an inherent issue with rarity, which they're trying to push. You can see this with the vehicles and also with certain skins, where you have certain camos. I believe the Abrams camo got up to $50 at some
Nah.
point, and I think it might also still be there.
Right.
So it's yeah, I don't like artificial rarity, and I would much prefer if they just went, hey, we're going to do a monthly thing. We're going to pick 20, 30 skins. We're going to chuck them into the game for various vehicles. We'll give you a news announcement every month and just say, right, here are the 20, 30 skins. You can have a look at them. If you want, they're 200, 250 GE each. And, Bob's your uncle. Just do it like that.
Yeah.
And a percentage goes to the creator. I think that'll be much better. I have seen an issue, though, which I don't know if this is an issue, but the Italian ground forces just got brought out, and I was having a look at the decals for the Italian ground forces, and there's only maybe 5 or 6 out of about 30 that you can actually grind. So the rest are just straight up, pay for, and uh, these are not decals which are crazy quality. Like, we're talking about a red square with 3 lines on it
Yeah.
that you have to pay for 200 GE. So for
Yeah.
me, it would be nice if that was kind of taken away, and
Yeah.
if you could just grind those things. But
Yeah, it
yeah,
should be
we'll have to
special
see.
things. I agree with that. It should be something special. If you I mean, a few crosses on a white background is laughable. You shouldn't pay 250, 200 for that. They could also vary in prices for that, but
Yeah.
I mean, make really special ones 300 and make simple ones cost less. And of course, the most simple ones, a cross on a white background should be grindable. I agree. You should just be able to unlock that. But they could do much more with that, and it should be. I mean, you then get people spending. I want that skin, and I'm gonna spend some money on that. And I've got a new P40, and I saw a fantastic skin for that. I'm gonna buy that skin. Instead of people saying, I am having so much trouble grinding, I guess I'm gonna pay premium. I'm gonna buy premium time, or I'm gonna buy a premium. That way, you force people to buy something, and people don't get a great feeling from that. If you have more of your commerce coming, your income coming from things that people actually want, you get a much more positive vibe in the players buying their stuff. So if people have the idea like, you see, I have to pay money to actually progress in this game, then you get a negative vibe. And if you have something like, hey, I bought this fantastic new skin for my P40, look at this, it's fantastic, I'm so glad I spent this money. It's a whole different vibe, and Gaijin is still making money, and I think they underestimate this. It has lured many people to other games, it has pushed people away, and I mean, I think it's one of the main things for their success in the end, and that has to do with their business model, like we talked about, squeezing people from their day one for money and trying to squeeze as much out of them for the few months that they're in the game, or actually trying to get people to stay years in the game and then over those years make more money than you would have made in those few months that they're staying now. And that is the main thing they have to change, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. I think long term ideas are always better than short term, especially if you're trying to. I mean, War Thunder is still in. I believe it's in the top 10 played games on Steam, or at least in the top 20 or top 30. Like, it's still a huge game,
Yeah,
and over the Christmas period, we've seen more growth for War Thunder. I personally saw about 88,000 people on at one time, which is numbers I haven't seen since Ground OBT. So the
yeah.
game is obviously, it still has a healthy population. It still has a lot of turnover. And I think it now this year, after last year, where we had a bunch of decisions which were obviously made for short term quicks, such as the rank 5 and the rank 5 jets and the ground forces. For me, it would be nice to see the structure of this year much more designed around long-term initiatives instead of short-term grabs over and over and over again. But we'll have to see, right? I mean, I would be incredibly surprised if the ideas change, but I would like them to.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope they do that because it would make this game, the longevity of the game, so much better. And the player retention they have right now is atrocious. I mean, there's a certain percentage of people that come back for every patch and see what's up, and then they leave again, and then you go back to 50,000 people playing at the same time, 40,000. But yeah, I agree with you. The numbers have been growing steadily the last 2 years, and their communication as well. But it can still be so much better. And what would they lose with it if you actually open up to people and say, "Hey, we're working on this. We discarded this idea because it just didn't work, and we are now looking for new ideas on World War mode, or we're thinking about World War One. We might be implementing that. We're working on this and this right now." Just open up, talk to people, and if you then say, "Hey, we don't make this. We're not going to make it in the first half of the year with this idea because of these troubles that we're on in the development," nobody would have any issue with that, and they could even change ideas then because of your feedback we're thinking this, so we may be changing this idea to that. You could have so much more interaction, so much more feel good, because that's actually what you get then. You get players who feel that they're taken seriously, and if you push this through in all aspects of this game, both financial, both progression wise in the game, the grind, and all that, yes, and that people can actually put ideas in. If you push all that together, then Gaijin could have a population, a community that is much more positive than the population that they have right now. And that's their own doing. It's all down to their business model and how they approach it. And these short-term patches with, oh, here you have new vehicles. And with these with rank 6, it's the same. It is new vehicles. Of course, we have the missiles. That's a new game mechanic. But it's still a bunch of new vehicles on the same game mode and the same game mechanics that we've had for 5 years. So, yeah, it's time for a step forward and no more steps back. And I hope Gaijin will listen to that and actually do that and implement that in 2019. That would be a major boost to the game, and I'm sure it would bring back Jesus Christ, it would bring back scores of people. That's my thought.
I agree. I think 2018 was the first year where we saw proper communication. I think 2019 should be the year of full communication, where we at least know what the general plans are. And I don't just mean content creators, I mean everyone. I actually think it would be generally a bad idea to have, just content creators have like this inner sanctum where, we see everything and nobody else does. I think that's an awful idea.
Yeah.
But but I think this year should definitely be a year of openness and a year where we do move away from these practices. I think that would be a wonderful thing to see. But I think after recording for about 55 minutes, it may be time to bring this to an end. So, Jengar, do you have any closing statements?
Well, I agree with you totally. It would be the Christmas present of the year, even though it's not Christmas anymore, if they would actually do this communication thing right. And it would solve a lot of things that we have right now. The feeling of not being understood, people thinking that Gaijin just goes for the money, and even me, I love this game, but sometimes you put this skeptical head on and you think, why are they actually doing certain things? And if they leave it open, then you're gonna have the negativity in there as well. And as people feel frustration, they will think bad things about your company, and it's just unnecessary. If the communication would be right, you would get a whole different vibe, and they could spread that over all the parts of this game. And I hope they do that. Like you said, it would be an immense gift, and it would be very good for War Thunder in the end and for the development of the game.
With what you said, I completely agree. There are a few there are a few things I understand that have to be a little bit more secret. There has to be things which are a little bit more. They have to be held to the chest when it comes to Gaijin's point of view. But I do think the openness is a factor that they should definitely try and promote this year, just from a trust point of view. I do generally think that no matter what happens in these communities, there is always going to be a heavy negative element. I don't, or maybe not even a heavy one, just a loud one. Whatever community I've been to, which is revolved around PvP, revolved around free to play, have been incredibly negative and always focusing on the negatives. And I don't know if it's just a human trait or if it just is how it is. But hopefully in the future, there is a bit more optimism about stuff, and that can only come from Gaijin themselves. So yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see going into the next year.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to thank Jengar for being here. And also on top of this, if you want to check out his channel, of course, there will be links in the description and the pinned comment, so you can go and check out his work. I highly recommend watching his videos. They're very informative and very, very interesting to watch. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.
If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button, become part of this community. If you are already a subscriber, don't forget to like the video, do leave me a comment, and if you really feel like helping out today, make sure to share the video with your friends and let them know about the channel.